Welcome to Energetic Advantage, the podcast where energy isn't woo, it's your edge. I'm your host, Jessica Serrato, intuitive strategist, lifelong pattern decoder, lover of numbers, and energetic guide for visionary leaders. Around here, we go energy first, strategy second. Every episode will give you a perspective, a tool, or a timeline shift that helps you lead from your power. Because the truth is, your energy is your most undervalued asset until you learn how to use it. Get ready, you're about to have the advantage. Let's begin. Okay, this episode is all about why I am canceling season 2. Now, before we get too dramatic, I am not canceling the podcast. I am canceling seasons, which, if I'm totally honest, feels both deeply rebellious from someone like me who is a rule follower, and also deeply on brand with the transformation I'm going through. And it's also going to be super funny because moving on in the podcast, you may still hear me say things like coming in season 2 or in season 2 of the podcast in future episodes. And we're just going to let her live, because if you know me at all, you know that I do not re-record anything. So I'm not making this a whole thing. I'm not creating administrative work for myself or my team because I changed my mind. And this is all part of the lesson. This is all part of the energy and the message that I really want to share with you today. Sometimes the thing that helps you begin becomes the thing that limits your growth if you keep clinging to it. That's exactly what happened to me here. And that's exactly the lesson and the wisdom I really want to share with you today, to have you thinking about your own life in this transformative month. So here's the backstory. Before I started this podcast, I really thought that I needed a plan, like a dialed in plan, because I wondered what if I run out of things to say? What if I can't get guests? What if I start strong and then panic halfway through? What if I lose momentum? What if I get to summer, and you know me, I take a lot of time off in the summer. What happens then? Which is hilarious right now, considering I have approximately 7,432 podcast ideas at all times. But before we have evidence, we tend to create safety. And for me, seasons created safety. Scaffolding the plan really allowed me to start. So, season 1 was all about leadership. And then season 2 was supposed to be about creators and creativity. And, we're still going to talk about those themes, but I no longer need that strict structure anymore. But at the time, back when I started, this actually helped me so much. It gave my brain categories. It reduced pressure. It gave me this scaffolding. And this is where I think we misunderstand structure sometimes. Structure is not bad. Structure can be incredibly supportive, especially, I'm going to go there, depending on your numerology. So for me, I'm a ruling 11, and I'm also a Virgo rising. So I naturally like having a framework. I like having a vision. I like seeing the path. I like organizing energy. This all feels very comfortable to me. But here's the thing that I think people miss about it. Structure is supportive when it creates movement, but it becomes suffocating when it becomes control. And there's a difference. I realized recently that in sticking to these seasons, I had started obeying a version of myself that existed before I had evidence. So past Jessica had created seasons because she was trying to create certainty. And present Jessica, me today, is like, oh no, the issue is not a lack of ideas. The issue is I cannot stop creating. I don't want to stop for a season break. I don't want to pause conversations. I don't need a topic to talk to people about. I don't want to organize my creativity into containers that feel too small anymore. The structure that helped me started interrupting momentum. And this is very connected to the energy of June and the 7 energy that we are all moving through right now. Because 7 energy questions things not to be difficult, not to rebel for the sake of rebellion, But because the 7 can feel when something has become performative instead of like simply alive. And I think a lot of us are realizing this right now. We're looking at systems, at habits, identities, business models, routines, even spiritual practices. And we're asking, wait, do I actually want this? Or did I just get really good at maintaining it? That's such a 7 question, because the shadow side of the 7, the disempowered side of the 7, can become incredibly attached to the right way, in quotation marks. So the right strategy, the right healing plan, the right routine, the right identity. And then suddenly we're no longer in a relationship with the thing, we're in obedience to it. And then the empowered side of the 7 comes in and says, no, like I want truth more than I want certainty. That is the energy of this shift for me. Because, let's get really honest here. Keeping seasons would have looked more organized. It would have looked cleaner. People understand seasons. It's like, whoa, this girl's got a plan. She's got season 1, season 2, season 3, right? But internally, it no longer felt true. And also, this has been a big learning now that I've had a team. I've always probably changed my mind or pivoted or changed course before. But the thing with being an entrepreneur and having my own business is that no one knew except me. And so now I had a team and I had to say, hey, listen, I know I said this and I was so sure this is what I wanted to do. And now I'm changing my mind. And it brings me back to that leadership lesson that I shared in one of the earlier episodes about lessons from a hot air balloon. If you haven't listened to that podcast, please go back and listen. I think it's episode 2, where, one of the lessons of leadership is not changing your mind because it's going to impact people. That's exactly when and why you have to trust your gut here. And if I didn't do this, if I didn't proactively make this choice, I'm telling you, I know the 7 energy well, and it would have absolutely dismantled this because it looked externally correct, but internally dead. And this is such a massive life lesson, right? I see this happen all the time with friends, with family, with clients. We create these systems and rules and identities and boundaries and plans based on the version of us that needed support in a particular moment. It was great. But then we evolve. And instead of updating the structure, we stay loyal to it, even when it's clearly too small, right? And I'll get to how each person does this a little bit differently, but here's like a universal example that I really want you to notice, right? Taking a multivitamin is a really good habit. It supports our health. But you cannot take the same multivitamin your entire life. I can't eat the gummy Flintstones or whatever that I give my kids, although sometimes I do, right? We have to shift and evolve. And it's not saying that what I was taking was bad for me. It was actually serving me. But when I get to this next level, when I'm really trying to optimize my health, I have to change it up. And, again, we do this for different reasons. So if you know your ruling number, you might find yourself in these examples. If you don't, you can do a really quick calculation. You can take your birthday and you can add all the digits together to get a digit between 2 and 11. I actually have a free ebook on my website. You can download it. I will calculate it for you and I'll give you an overview of your ruling number. But when we talk about the lens here, a ruling number 4 might cling to structure because it creates safety, it creates predictability. A ruling number 5 might rebel against structure immediately and never let it support them long enough to actually build momentum. A ruling number 2 might stay loyal to a system because they don't want to disappoint people attached to the old version of them. And a ruling number 7 might isolate inside the structure because they think they need to figure it all out before pivoting. And then meanwhile, like the ruling number 10 is like, okay, new idea, burn it down, let's go, right? Every number has its own relationship, right? With freedom, with structure, with safety and evolution. And this shows up everywhere, right? I had a client who decided that she wanted to take a break from the dating apps. So she's like, I deleted the apps, done, done, done. Beautiful. But then in our next session, I was like, listen, what if we just change up the structure? What if we just re-engage with the apps with a different energy, with a different intention? We use it as more of a lifting up structure. Like we become more intentional with it. 48 hours later, she gets matched with someone totally unexpected and also totally amazing and fun. And it's like, it's interesting because you look back and be like, well, the apps were wrong. It was the wrong structure. No. The boundary wasn't wrong. The structure wasn't wrong. The support wasn't wrong. But the energy shifted, right? We stopped trying to force the path. And then suddenly life had room to surprise her. And this happens in business all the time too, right? People come to me convinced that they need one strategy, one perfect brand message, one offer, one niche. And listen, sometimes narrowing focus is supportive, especially y'all with a lot of ones in your chart. Trust me, I know. But sometimes I feel that people are trying to reduce themselves into something more manageable because they think complexity is the problem. But meanwhile, their magic is actually their range, their multidimensionality, their ability to connect dots that other people can't. And I think this is where I think people accidentally start really worshiping structure instead of movement. Like the plan becomes more important than the actual energy. And other great example, I see this all the time, is health, right? So people, like if you have a goal, and then I think people decide, okay, this is the morning routine. This is the structure of my morning routine. We wake up at 5 a.m. We drink the green juice. We meditate for 47 hours. We only cold plunge under a full moon while listening to whale sounds, right? And suddenly their wellness routine, their structure, requires the organizational skills of like a NASA launch or something. But meanwhile, the thing that would actually help their body is something as simple as more sleep, more laughter, less pressure, walking outside, eating more regularly. The structure had become more important than the body. And spirituality, oh my gosh, like we do this constantly. I think people sometimes think that their intuition is going to sound like Morgan Freeman narrating their destiny. Like, go here, your path is found, whatever. But like really intuition is like, hey, maybe don't go there tonight. Or it's like, text that person. Or, oh, you're tired. Like, that's it. But because it doesn't feel dramatic enough, we ignore it. This idea that growth has to look serious to count, right? And, some of the biggest energetic shifts happen through play. We know this, through experimentation, through following what feels alive. And so this is where this interesting energy comes, because I had a realization the other day that canceling seasons of this podcast is not me becoming less committed to the podcast. It's actually me becoming more devoted to it, because devotion listens. Control dictates, tells, right? And there's a difference. This isn't inconsistency. This isn't avoidance. This isn't me not wanting discipline. It's actually deeper trust, deeper responsiveness, deeper relationship. Because when something feels alive, you have to stay in conversation with it. And that structure sometimes limits the conversation. We can't just force this aliveness to obey a blueprint that no longer fits. And this is one of the biggest energetic sabotages we experience as human beings. We confuse or conflate discipline with rigidity. We confuse or conflate commitment with permanence. We confuse or conflate devotion with obedience. There is a difference between honoring a structure and imprisoning yourself within it. Because energy does not move in these neat little containers. It spirals, it pivots, it evolves, it expands. It contradicts itself sometimes. And I think part of maturity especially energetic maturity, is realizing that you are allowed to outgrow your own systems. You do not owe lifelong loyalty to a version of yourself who was trying to feel safe. And I really want you to hear this. The structure was not wrong. The structure worked. It got me moving. It got me to do the thing. I genuinely do not know if I would have started this podcast without seasons or having the structure of seasons. And this really matters because sometimes scaffolding is necessary, but scaffolding is not meant to stay forever. It's not meant to become the building. That's the difference. And this is the energetic advantage. Knowing when something is supporting your expansion versus when it's like quietly becoming a cage. So no, I'm not canceling the podcast. If anything, I'm really finally allowing it to become what it wanted to be all along. A living conversation, a continuation, a real-time evolution. And that feels more like energy. Anyway, it feels more like me. So as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with a few questions. And this is the perfect month to ask yourself these questions. Okay, here we go. Where in your life are you still following a rule that no longer fits? What structure once supported you, but might now be limiting your growth? And maybe the most important, but also the most difficult question here is, what version of yourself are you still obeying? That's really what this episode is about. It's not about podcast systems or seasons. It's not about systems. It's not about routines. It's about recognizing when something has served its purpose and then having the courage to update the container. The structure, like I said, isn't wrong. The question is it still alive? And if it isn't, the most aligned thing you can do isn't hold on tighter. It's listen. It's experiment. Take the swing. Right? In this energy of June. Participate, not because you know, but because you trust. We gotta find out. And, speaking of seasons, I have a really fun event that's actually, if you're listening to this, happening tomorrow on June 11th. But if you happen to listen after, you can still gain access to the replay. You can get the workbook and all of it. It's my Q3 forecast called the Season of Light. And this is a forecast of July, August, and September of 2026, where we take a deeper look at the themes, the opportunities, the decision points, and all of these energetic currents moving through this next quarter so that we can stop guessing about what the energetic weather is going to be and really start working with the timing. Clarity often isn't about having more information. It's about understanding the season that we are in. And so listen, if you're hearing this and you're like, okay, something's shifting, but I can't quite put my finger on it, that's what this forecast is designed to help you with. So I'll put it in the show notes. You can join us either live or on the replay. And if you're looking for something a bit more personalized, I really would love to have a one-on-one session with you. We will see the pattern. We will understand the timing. We will identify this thing that you've outgrown, but maybe haven't admitted to yourself yet. Because this is the work that I love most. Helping you see what's already there. Getting to the signal underneath the noise. So whether I see you inside the Q3 forecast, in a one-on-one session, on Instagram, or back here next week for another episode, thank you for being part of this conversation. And also thank you for supporting this podcast. This seasonless podcast. This ongoing evolutionary energetic advantage that I have just grown to love and trust myself more and more. If you have suggestions, now that there are no seasons, if you have suggestions for what you want to hear next or the conversation that you want to have, please DM me on Instagram. The sky's the limit, my friend. When there is no structure, you can do whatever you want. See you next time.
Thanks for being here inside the Energetic Advantage. If today's episode opened something for you, share it, tag it, or send it to the person who popped into your mind. And remember, Energy first, strategy second. Your advantage has always been in you. Now it's time to lead with it. See you next time.